Long ago, in the land of Israel, the people were suffering. The Midianites, a fierce and powerful enemy, would sweep through their land like a swarm of locusts, destroying their crops and stealing their animals. The Israelites were left with nothing, hiding in caves and mountains, afraid to fight back. They cried out to God for help, begging him to save them. One of these Israelites was a man named Gideon. He was not a soldier or a warrior, just a simple farmer. One day, he was secretly threshing wheat in a winepress, hiding from the Midianites. He worked quietly, his heart pounding with fear, knowing that if the enemy found him, they would take everything. Suddenly, a bright light shone near him, and he turned around in shock. A man stood before him, dressed in shining robes, his face full of strength and kindness. Gideon gasped and fell to his knees, realizing that this was no ordinary man, this was an angel of the Lord. The angel spoke, his voice powerful yet gentle. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon looked around, confused. Was the angel speaking to him? A mighty warrior? He was just a frightened farmer, hiding from his enemies. "Sir," Gideon said hesitantly, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened? Why are the Midianites destroying our land? Where are the miracles our ancestors told us about? It feels like God has abandoned us." The angel's eyes burned with a holy fire. "The Lord has not abandoned you. He has chosen you to save Israel. Go in the strength you have, and deliver your people from the Midianites." Gideon's heart pounded. Him? Save Israel? That was impossible. He shook his head. "But how can I do this? My family is the weakest in the tribe, and I am the least important in my family. I am not a leader, not a warrior." The angel took a step closer, his voice firm. "The Lord will be with you. With his power, you will strike down the Midianites as if they were nothing." Gideon's mind swirled with doubt and fear. But deep inside, something stirred. What if this was true? What if God had truly chosen him for something greater? Still unsure, Gideon whispered, "If this is really from the Lord, give me a sign." The angel nodded. Gideon quickly ran to prepare an offering, a young goat and unleavened bread. He placed them on a rock before the angel. Then, with a single touch of the angel's staff, fire erupted from the rock, consuming the offering in a flash of divine power. Gideon fell to the ground, trembling. "I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But the angel's voice reassured him. "Do not be afraid. You will not die. Instead, you will rise in faith." That night, Gideon built an altar to God, calling it "The Lord is Peace." His heart still held fear, but something new was growing inside him, hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could become the mighty warrior God saw in him. That night, as Gideon lay on his bed, his mind raced with thoughts. Could he truly be the one to save Israel? He was just a simple man. How could he stand against the mighty Midianites? Then, in the stillness of the night, the voice of the Lord came to him. "Gideon, if you are to lead my people, you must first destroy the altar of Baal that stands in your father's house. Tear it down, cut down the Asherah pole beside it, and build an altar to me, the one true God. Then, take your father's best bull and offer it as a sacrifice." Gideon sat up in shock. The altar of Baal was sacred to many in his village, even to his own family. If he destroyed it, the people might turn against him. Fear gripped his heart. But deep inside, another feeling stirred: faith. If God had called him, then obedience was more important than fear. Gideon gathered 10 of his servants and whispered his plan. "We must do it at night when no one can see us." The men nodded, their faces filled with uncertainty, but they followed him. In the darkness, they crept to the altar. The massive stone structure loomed over them, its carved images of Baal and Asherah standing proudly in the moonlight. Taking a deep breath, Gideon lifted an axe and swung it hard against the wooden pole. Crack! The Asherah pole split in two. The men worked quickly, pulling down the altar stone by stone, their hearts pounding in fear and excitement. When the altar lay in ruins, Gideon built a new one for the Lord. He placed the wood upon it, tied up his father's prized bull, and sacrificed it just as God had commanded. The scent of burning offering filled the night air, and for the first time, Gideon felt something he had never felt before: courage. As the first rays of sunlight crept over the hills, shouts echoed through the village. Who did this? The people gathered in horror before the ruined altar. Murmurs turned into angry cries. This is an insult to Baal. The one who did this must die. Then someone pointed. It was Gideon, the son of Joash. The crowd rushed toward Gideon's house, demanding his death. Gideon stood frozen inside, fear gripping his chest. He knew this moment would come. He had obeyed God, but now he might pay the price. Then, to his surprise, his father Joash stepped outside to face the crowd. He raised his hand for silence. Why are you defending Baal? If Baal is truly a god, let him defend himself. Let him punish the one who tore down his altar. The crowd hesitated, muttering among themselves. Joash was right. If Baal was truly powerful, he could take revenge on Gideon himself. Slowly, the anger in the people's eyes faded. They left, murmuring about what had happened. From that day forward, Gideon was called Jerubbaal, meaning let Baal contend with him. But Baal did nothing, and Gideon remained unharmed. That night, Gideon looked up at the stars, his heart pounding. He had taken the first step of faith. And though he still felt fear, he knew one thing for sure: God was with him. Gideon had taken the first step of obedience, but his true battle had not yet begun. The Midianites and their allies, the Amalekites, gathered once again, their vast armies spreading across the valley like a sea of locusts. Their camels alone were too many to count, and their warriors were strong and fierce. The sight of them made Gideon's heart tremble. Then, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, filling him with courage. With boldness he had never known before, he took a trumpet and blew it loudly. The sound echoed through the hills, a call to battle. Messengers ran to the tribes of Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, summoning men to fight. Soon, 32,000 warriors gathered at Gideon's side. But as Gideon stood before them, doubt crept into his heart. Was he truly the one to lead them? Could they defeat an army so vast? That night, alone in his tent, Gideon knelt before the Lord. "Lord," he whispered, "you have said that you will save Israel through me, but I am still afraid. Please give me a sign so I will know for sure that you are with me." Gideon took a wool fleece and laid it on the threshing floor. "Lord," he prayed, "if you are truly with me, let the fleece be wet with dew in the morning, but let the ground around it be dry." The next morning, Gideon rushed to check the fleece. His breath caught as he saw it. The fleece was soaked with water, but the ground was completely dry. He picked it up and squeezed it, and water poured out, enough to fill a bowl. Gideon's heart raced, but doubt still whispered in his mind. What if this was just a coincidence? Timidly, he prayed again. "Lord, please don't be angry with me, but let me ask one more time. Tonight, let the fleece remain dry, but let the ground be wet with dew." The next morning, Gideon ran outside. His hands trembled as he touched the fleece. It was completely dry, but the ground around it was soaked with dew. Gideon fell to his knees. There was no denying it. God was with him. That morning, he stood before his army, his voice strong. "The Lord has called us to battle. We will fight, and we will win, for the Lord himself is with us." A mighty cheer rose from the men. But as Gideon looked at them, so many, yet still so few compared to the enemy, he knew that the greatest test was yet to come. And he had no idea that God was about to test him in a way he never expected. The sun rose over the hills, casting golden light on Gideon's camp. His army of 32,000 men stood ready, their weapons in hand, their eyes fixed on the vast Midianite forces below. But before Gideon could give the order to march, the voice of the Lord came to him. "You have too many men." Gideon's heart skipped a beat. Too many? How could that be? The Midianites were like a swarm, covering the valley. His army was already small in comparison. Then the Lord continued, "If I let you win with this many men, Israel will boast, 'We won by our own strength.' I want them to know that I am the one who gives victory." Gideon swallowed hard. He had learned to trust God, but this command was difficult. Still, he obeyed. He climbed onto a rock and called out to his men, "Any man who is afraid may go home." A hush fell over the crowd. The men looked at one another, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Slowly, some began to step back. Then more. Soon, Gideon watched in shock as 22,000 men turned and left, their heads low with shame. Only 10,000 remained. Gideon took a deep breath, trying to steady his heart. They were few, but surely this would be enough. Then, God spoke again. "There are still too many." Gideon's breath caught in his throat. Too many? He had already lost more than half his men. But the Lord gave him another command. "Take them to the water, and I will test them for you there." Gideon obeyed, leading his army down to the stream. As they reached the water, he watched carefully as the men drank. Some bent down and put their mouths directly to the water like animals. But others scooped the water up with their hands, bringing it to their mouths while keeping their eyes alert. Then God said, "Keep only those who drank from their hands. Send the rest home." Gideon counted. Only 300 men had passed the test. The rest, 9,700 warriors, were sent away. Gideon stood there, staring at the small group left. His heart pounded. He had started with 32,000, and now he had only 300. The Midianite army was vast, too many to count. How could 300 men defeat such a force? Then God spoke again. "With these 300 men, I will save Israel and deliver the Midianites into your hands. Go forward without fear." Gideon closed his eyes, breathing deeply. He had asked for a sign before. Now, God was asking him to be the sign. To trust. To believe. He turned to his small army and raised his voice. "The Lord has chosen you, and with his strength, we will overcome." The 300 men raised their weapons and shouted, but Gideon knew the truth. This would not be a battle of swords. This would be a battle of faith. The night ahead would change everything. The night was dark, and the Midianite camp stretched across the valley like an endless sea. Their fires flickered, and the sound of laughter and conversation drifted through the air. The enemy had no fear. They believed Israel was too weak to fight back. But on the hill above them, Gideon stood with his 300 men, holding onto a strategy that made no sense in human eyes, because it was God's plan. Gideon took a deep breath and turned to his soldiers. "Tonight, we do not fight with swords. We fight with faith. Each man, take a trumpet in one hand and a clay jar with a torch inside in the other." The men exchanged looks of confusion. No swords, no spears, just trumpets, jars, and torches. But they had seen God's power in choosing them, and they trusted their leader. Then Gideon smiled and said, "Watch me and do as I do. When I give the signal, blow your trumpets, break your jars, and shout as loudly as you can, for the Lord and for Gideon." The men nodded, their hands tightening around their strange weapons. Quietly, Gideon led his 300 warriors down the hillside. The enemy camp was vast, filled with thousands of Midianite soldiers fast asleep, unaware of what was about to happen. Then, at the exact moment God had chosen, Gideon raised his trumpet and blew as hard as he could. Toot! All at once, the night exploded with sound. The 300 men blew their trumpets in unison, the sharp blast shattering the silence. Then they smashed their clay jars against the ground, and the sudden burst of light from their torches filled the darkness. "For the Lord and for Gideon," they shouted, their voices thundering through the valley. The Midianites woke up in terror. Confused and disoriented, they stumbled from their tents. The blaring trumpets, the smashing jars, and the blazing torches surrounding them made it seem as if a massive army was attacking from all sides. Panic spread like wildfire. In the chaos, the Midianites turned on each other, mistaking their own allies for enemies. Swords clashed, men screamed, and the once confident army fell into complete disorder. Gideon and his men never lifted a sword, yet the enemy was defeated by their own fear. Those who survived fled in terror, running for their lives. As dawn broke, Gideon stood at the top of the hill, watching as the mighty army of Midian vanished like a mist in the wind. The victory was clear. God had won the battle. His 300 men stood beside him, breathless from what they had just witnessed. None of them could have imagined such a triumph. But they had trusted God, and He had done the impossible. Gideon lifted his eyes to the heavens. "Thank you, Lord," he whispered. The battle had been won, but Gideon knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning of Israel's return to faith. As the sun rose over the valley, the battlefield lay silent. The once mighty Midianite army had been utterly destroyed, not by swords, not by strength, but by the power of God. The few enemies who survived had fled far away, their spirits broken, their confidence shattered. Gideon stood on the hilltop, looking down at the valley where fear had once ruled. But now, faith had won. His 300 men stood around him, their torches still flickering, their trumpets now silent. Not a single one of them had fallen in battle. Then, messengers arrived from the nearby Israelite tribes, their faces full of amazement. "Gideon, the Midianites are running. They are weak. Let us chase them down and finish them completely," one of them said. Gideon nodded. "Yes, we must not let them return to harm us again." So he sent messengers throughout the land, calling the warriors of Ephraim to block the river crossings so that no Midianite could escape. The Israelite fighters pursued the fleeing army, capturing their leaders and ensuring that Israel would be free from their oppression. When the battle was finally over, Gideon and his men returned home victorious. The people of Israel rushed out to meet them, cheering and celebrating. "You saved us, Gideon," they shouted. "You must rule over us. Be our king, and let your sons rule after you." Gideon shook his head. He raised his hands to quiet the crowd and said, "I will not rule over you, nor will my sons. The Lord alone will be your king." The people fell silent, his words sinking deep into their hearts. For years, they had forgotten God and tried to live by their own strength. But now they saw the truth: only by trusting in God could they truly be free. Gideon did not take a throne or wear a crown. He returned to his home, living humbly among his people. He had learned an important lesson: victory does not come from numbers, power, or human strength. It comes from faith in God. For many years, Israel lived in peace, free from the terror of Midian. But Gideon knew that the true battle was not just against armies, it was a battle to keep faith alive in the hearts of the people. And as long as they remembered what God had done, they would never fear again. Moral lessons from the story. 1. Faith, not numbers, brings victory. Gideon started with 32,000 men but won with only 300. God's power is greater than human strength. 2. Fear should not stop us from obeying God. Gideon was afraid, but he trusted God step by step, and God used him for a great purpose. 3. God uses the humble, not the mighty. Gideon was an ordinary man, yet God made him a great leader because of his faith. 4. True leadership points to God. Gideon refused to take the throne, reminding Israel that God is the true king. 5. Trusting in God brings peace. When Israel followed God, they had victory and peace. But when they forgot him, they suffered. Gideon's story teaches us that true strength comes from faith, not numbers or power. No matter how small or weak you feel, God can use you for something great. If you were inspired by this story, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more powerful lessons from the Bible. Leave a comment below. What did you learn from Gideon's story? Let's keep the conversation going.